Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. Bangladesh's Army Chief General Waqaruzzaman has had enough. He's put the Mohammad Yunus caretaker government on notice. Don't say I didn't warn you, he said recently. Now, when army chiefs lose their patience in Bangladesh, civilians should worry. Bangladesh has been directly ruled by the military for 17 of its 54 years. Let's first listen into why the army in Bangladesh is angry.
যদি নিজেদের মধ্যে ভেদাভেদ ভুলে একসাথে কাজ না করতে পারেন, নিজেরা যদি কাদা ছোড়াছুড়ি করেন, মারামারি কাটাকাটি করেন, এই দেশ এবং জাতির স্বাধীনতা সার্বভৌমত্ব বিপন্ন হবে। আমি আজকে বলে দিলাম, নাইলে আপনারা বলবেন যে আমি আপনাদের সতর্ক করিনি। আমি সতর্ক করে দিচ্ছি আপনাদের। আমার অন্য কোনো আকাঙ্ক্ষা নাই, আমার একটাই আকাঙ্ক্ষা, দেশ এবং জাতিটাকে একটা সুন্দর জায়গায় রেখে ছুটি করা। I had enough. Was last 7-8 months, I had enough.
Bangladesh has been on a steady downhill trajectory since the 8th of March with violence, anarchy, and an economy that's under inflationary pressure. Joining me to make sense of these developments, including the Army Chief's latest statements, are Ambassador Veena Sikri, Raja Mujib, and Lieutenant General P. Ravi Shankar. Welcome to the News9 Plus show. Ambassador Sikri, I want to ask you this. The statements made by the Army Chief, General Waqaruzzaman, he's been quietly watching this, and yesterday, 2 days back, he lost his patience and he's kind of put the Yunus government, the interim administration on alert. Do you believe that it's only a matter of time before the Bangladesh army takes over and says, we've had enough? Now we are going to take over and, supervise the carrying out of elections, which is what everyone's wanting there, including the political parties.
Let me say very clearly that actually it was the Army Chief General Waqaruzzaman who was in charge on the 5th of August 24, immediately after Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina left Dhaka.
Yes.
And he is the one who said, after meeting the political parties, and he gave Jamaat-e-Islami very high precedence in that, and
Right.
he is the one who said that I am asking the interim government to take over, and he said that we have consulted with the Supreme Court and doctrine of necessity, we need to have a government. Because at that time, the interim government, there was no provision for it in the Bangladesh
Right.
constitution.
Right.
There's still not. Now, after 6 months and more have passed, General Waqaruzzaman's statement day before yesterday is, first of all, a very clear indication, a warning to the interim regime led by Dr. Yunus that you have not fulfilled what you were supposed to do. Because interim government, caretaker government, whatever it is, they are supposed to organize elections and they are supposed to maintain law and order. And
Yes.
this regime has done neither. And
Yes.
finally, even this regime, the most important element of a caretaker government are that it should be non-party and neutral. And this regime has violated even that. Because
Right.
everybody knows that it's Jamaat-e-Islami in charge, they are controlling Dr. Yunus, he has no control of his own, unable or unwilling to do everything. And there are Islamist parties in the interim regime. There is the
Yes.
Hizb ut-Tahrir, there is the Hifaz-e-Islam, there is the Islami Andolan Bangladesh, and so on. Now, so what General Waqaruzzaman is saying is that you guys have not done your job.
Right.
And actually, you can't say the army is in the barracks. The army has actually been given magistracy powers and police powers because
Right.
the police was to do with the policemen. So many policemen had been killed, so many thanas had been burnt that
Yes.
there was no police in place.
Right.
So what General Waqaruzzaman is telling him, he said, I'm warning you that if you do, I am going to stay. He has already said that the army, which has been given these magistracy powers for short terms at a stretch, is now going to stay in charge with magistracy powers and
Yes.
police powers till the next elections.
Right.
So that he's already said. Now the next question is that will Dr. Yunus at all come online for conducting early elections? I don't
Right.
think so, because Dr. Yunus is still talking about reforms before elections.
Yes.
He's still saying, no, we need reforms, and actually reforms are not the job of an interim regime.
Exactly.
Reforms are the job of an elected parliament.
Right.
So if Dr. Yunus continues with this, I can see that you would need to get another caretaker government in place to conduct the elections in as quick time as possible. So I
Absolutely.
think that the army is showing that they want to be democratic, they want to have elections. This is a strong indication that General Waqaruzzaman has given that he's unhappy with what is going on. He's saying two
Yes.
things. First of all, there is no law and order, complete breakdown of law and order, complete breakdown of the economy, and thirdly, everybody is fighting with everybody else in Dhaka. Even
Right.
the students, they want to start a political party tomorrow. But the
Yes.
factionalism, the fighting, the fisticuffs, it's amazing. You just see the reportage and the
Yes.
videos coming out of Dhaka. The students are really fighting among themselves. And
Absolutely.
the Islamic Shabir students are saying, oh, we are leaving this group, we are leaving that. Nobody knows clearly which group is going to form what group, what political party tomorrow. So the 28th of February, which is the date that they have given
Yes.
for forming of a students or anti-discrimination or students against discrimination party and so on. We don't even know the name of the party yet. So obviously there is a complete breakdown of every kind of normalcy in Bangladesh, and the students fighting among themselves is really the last straw, because we find various groups of students wanting to take
Yes.
over control every university in the country. And you can imagine that within the country, what a lot of chaos this will cause. The army has put everybody on notice. General Bakr Zaman has put everybody on notice about this. You are quite right about the factions within the army. Absolutely right. There
Yes.
is a very strong Islamist faction within the army. The Pakistan generals, ISI generals coming to Bangladesh has been a very bad sign of wanting to restore the full presence of Pakistan in Bangladesh. I remember when I was there, it was exactly like this, because Khalda Zia was the prime minister, Jamaat-e-Islami was part of the government, and the ISI was running the show. And they're trying to do that again. And, at one point, we even heard that they might even have tried to replace General Waqar Zaman. But that has not happened. I think Waqar Zaman has stood his ground.
Yes.
And because he has stood his ground, because he's showing his confidence that he is in charge, so he
Yes.
made this statement to say, look, I'm in charge. I'm going to remain in charge till the elections, and I'm going to make sure they're held early. So either you guys get your act together and announce the elections,
Right.
or see what he's going to do about it.
Or, like you mentioned, Ambassador Sikri, there could be another interim government. Who knows? And that's actually a heartwarming sign. The fact that the military is, putting the caretaker government on notice to say that, look, you guys are not doing your job of which is to conduct early elections. General Shankar, make sense of what the army chief said recently. How worried should the civilian government or the interim administration in Bangladesh be with this statement saying that he's had enough? Does that mean a military takeover is around the corner?
I think everyone in Bangladesh needs to be worried about the developments there. And I think there's a lot of depth to what the Bangladesh army chief has spoken. And if you watch the Bangladesh over the past 8 months, he's probably been the sanest of the voices
Yes.
which has come about so far. And if he has gone on to say that, don't tell me I warned you, and for the past 8 months I've been watching, things are bad. It's a polycrisis of the highest order. There's a political crisis.
Yes.
There's an economic crisis. Law and order is completely short in that place. There's a societal crisis of increasing radicalism,
Right.
minority targeting and things like that. There's moral policing going on out there.
Yes.
And there's also a geopolitical crisis. I mean, just imagine at this point, as we are talking, there's a 66-member BNP team on a 10-day visit to China.
Yes.
And like that. And the elections and reforms, they are a chicken and egg story.
Yes.
One part of the country wants elections first, the other part of the country wants reforms first.
Yes.
They're split, and nothing is going right. If you look at it, one day there's a transport strike, other day there's a lorry strike,
Yes.
third day there's a tanker strike or a railway strike or something or the other. And today there are reports that the banks are under meltdown.
Right.
And the number of those NLPs,
Yeah.
non-performing loans are going up. So I think, and of course, the garment industry, which is their mainstay of their
Yes.
economy, has virtually collapsed. And then the USAID business, which has come out, where
Yes.
Trump has come out and said $29 billion. $29 million have been given to a company with just 2 people on the payroll.
Yes.
So I think there are a whole lot of things. The situation is completely out of the control of the interim government.
Yes.
And if the army chief at this point of time has come out and said, we have to be worried, and there's a strident anti-India feeling, and there's a strident anti-minority feeling within the country, and for some strange reason, Bangladesh attributes its own problems
Yes.
to India. They've externalized their internal problems
Absolutely,
to
the
what
foreign
are,
hand, as you said. But
yeah,
General Shankar, very quickly, thanks for making sense of that poly crisis. In fact, you gave a word for that poly crisis, the
yeah,
unarchy.
it's called
Bangladesh
unarchy.
is unarchy.
Unarchy. It's
But
not anarchy, they are in unarchy. Yes.
it's a unarchy indeed. But what will it take General Wakaruzaman, who's a very sane, very stable, very sensible military chief? In fact, he's the one who refused to fire on the protesters. He actually advised Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to leave on the 8th of August. What will it take him to become a Hussein Mohammad Ershad or even Ziaur Rahman to actually take power and say that, look, Yunus isn't doing his work, let me do it for him?
Look, what I've said about this unarchy, anarchy, whatever you call it, is just the tip of the iceberg. There is surging crime. Media is under pressure. A lot of media
Yes,
people are still in the can.
right.
There's a clash between, various student leagues going on and all that, and some more street protests, killing and all that. And I think he'll be forced to take over because otherwise, I don't see any party coming into some consensus.
Right.
And this government is absolutely ineffectual from any direction you take.
Absolutely, absolutely
Every day,
ineffective.
crisis to
Yes,
crisis.
poly crisis, crisis to crisis, living from one crisis to the next. But Raja Mujib makes sense of this. Do you believe that the general Wakaruzaman has it in him to be military dictator? He could actually say that, lose his patience. He says that I'm running out of patience. I've been watching very quietly for several months now, but given the way things are shaping out in Bangladesh, where they're blaming everyone but themselves for their problems, do you believe that General Wakaruzaman could actually become another Ershad or a Ziaur Rahman?
If you look at Fakhru Zaman, he's given a warning shot to the Yunus regime, saying that either mend your ways or he has no other option left. But look, within the Bangladeshi army, there are fissures in there as well. There are other two generals, who are eyeing for the top post, and I wouldn't be surprised if the army does the coup. And even they retired the General of Rahman, and they send him home as well. There
Yes.
could be chances for that as well. You have Fazlur Rahman, who's very close to Yunus. He's very close to the Jamaat-e-Islami. He's with Tahrir from that line of thought. Then you have another chap called just let me check. Yeah, Shahidul Haq, who basically heads the 9th Brigade, and that is the coup brigade, which is known as in Bangladesh, because every coup which has been carried out in Bangladesh before has been carried out by this particular brigade. He's in charge of that coup brigade. So within the army, there are also fissures of how to back and who to back, because obviously, Bangladesh we have seen is as a constant chaos.
Yes.
It is descending into constant chaos. And look. Army taking over, excuse me, sorry for that. Army taking over in Bangladesh is the next natural progression of what is going to happen there.
Right.
Because if the army doesn't take over the Bangladesh soon, you will have a situation where Bangladesh will be on a tip of a civil war, where everybody will be
Yes.
at everybody's throat, because
Absolutely. Yes.
there are too many power centers there. So that's how I see the situation emerging. I think it's about it's a matter of time when the army is going to step in and when army is going to take over from the Yunus region.
It's a matter of time, Raja Mujib, the fact that the Bangladesh army could take over. General Shankar, the Bangladesh army has been in the barracks for a very long time now. Do you believe that, given the way things are playing out, they wouldn't want to actually come and take over power? What kind of role do you think they will actually play in this? Will they be an interim government that will only supervise the peaceful transition to elections, or will they actually, develop a taste for power and continue well, like a lot of military dictators in the subcontinent?
Look, once an army man sits in a chair, he'll not leave it. Let's be very clear.
Yes.
History doesn't say so. And the situation in Bangladesh it's not a stopgap measure. There are long-term things which will have to happen.
Yes.
And like what Raja Mujib was saying, it could goes either way. Within the Bangladesh army, there are factions, we know it, and that 9 division which controls all the bridges into Daka
Yes.
is the one which is critical for a coup to take place. Now, it depends on which faction takes over and how it evolves. And we also need to understand that there have been not only coups and all that, there have been assassinations also.
Yes, very
So,
violent
yeah.
transfer of power. I mean, power has never been transferred very peacefully in Bangladesh.
And you know, interestingly, every ruler in Bangladesh has either been killed or couped or he has been moved out of the place.
With the
So,
exception of General Ershad, who made that
yeah,
peaceful transition from,
no, but
from the
he
military
didn't. He
to
was also
civilian
put in
politics.
jail.
Yes.
He also put in jail, and so they have not had a happy ending.
General Shankar, just make sense of this, the student politics here in Bangladesh. A lot of students, they were at the vanguard of the protests which culminated in Sheikh Hasina's exit in August. They are now fighting among themselves. Tomorrow, as Ambassador Sikri pointed out, they are launching a political party, but there again there are factions. Do you see the students in Bangladesh being a political party of consequence ahead of the elections?
The way I look at it, every revolution eats its own children.
Yes.
So this process has started already. And I have had no doubts whatsoever that these students fundamentally would eventually gravitate to make a political force. Whether they have the capability or not is a different story,
Right.
but it will go. But I'd like to put a point across, about General Wakaruzaman. The point is, he's been quite politically consummate in handling all the affairs and maintaining a distance
Yes.
with the help of the Supreme Court. With the kind of grip he seems to have over the thing, I don't know whether there'll be someone else, another faction who can override him and come about.
Right.
That's the only hope I have. If that goes astray and someone else comes, then you're looking at a very grave situation in Bangladesh. That's the first part. Of course, coming back to the part which you said about the students, they're clearly political guys who got political ambitions and
Yes.
quite radical in their outlook. And that's a third dangerous element which is coming in. You must also add to the fact that both the Begums have again spoken. Hasina spoke last week, and yesterday
Yes.
I think Khalidasi also has given a statement. All these, raised the temperature, the political temperature out there, and it doesn't lead to a solution. So I think the situation is pretty tricky out there at this point of time. Like, add to the fact that China is fishing in dirty waters.
Yes. Ambassador, I must ask you this, Ambassador Sikri. Foreign Minister Jaishankar made a very interesting statement yesterday. He asked the Bangladeshi government, the interim administration, to decide that, which way they want India-Bangladesh relations to go. Decode for us what this diplomatic language means. Where do we stand on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being mildly upset and 10, of course, being a full-scale war or a breakdown of diplomatic, ties.
Well, I must say that maybe on the 8th of August 2024,
Yes.
When Mohammed Yunus was sworn in, at that time we were probably at the scale of 1 that you spoke about.
Right.
Because we were quite willing. We said we are willing to do business with you, we're willing to talk to
Yes.
you. If you recall, Prime Minister Modi, when he sent the message of felicitations to
Yes.
Dr. Mohammed Yunus, he even said that we are felicitating you and we hope that you look after the Hindus and other minorities in Bangladesh. So one clear factor immediately flagged by India was that between the 5th and going on even till today, but by the 8th it was already very, very serious,
Yes.
the attacks on the minorities, the cruel, bestial rapings, killings, lynching,
Yes.
destruction of property, forcing people to resign, all that was going on. And it was flagged by India. So already you could see that India had, even despite the message of felicitations, the expression of willingness to do business, we were worried about what was going on in Bangladesh. And I must say immediately that the situation has only got worse. And there was absolutely no interest from the Bangladesh side in improving their relations with India.
Right.
That was a very, not one statement of interest or willingness that we want to have good relations with you. No interest from any leader of the Bangladesh interim regime to come to India. And of course, Tawhid Hussain went to China straight away, very soon after he became Foreign Affairs Advisor. But absolutely no interest in India. Only there was a meeting in New York on the sidelines of the GA. Then in December, our Foreign Secretary, Vikram Mishri, went. That was a good
Yes.
visit, but he spoke very frankly. He spoke clearly, as he said in his own explanation afterwards, that my talks were frank, candid and constructive. That means he spoke very bluntly to them. So that was already showing that we were getting, very seriously worried by what was happening in Bangladesh. And he told them that we will deal substantively with the government after the elections. Right now, on a day-to-day basis, we'll continue. Now, in the new year, there's been another meeting between the Foreign Affairs Advisor and External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, in Muscat. Two important points came out of it.
Yes.
And our External Affairs Minister said that, look, we are prepared to do, but from your side, all your statements about India are very negative.
Yes.
So what is it that you want? You must decide what you want. He said clearly that every statement about India coming out of Bangladesh is negative. The second point he made in his talks with Tawheed Hussain, Foreign Affairs Advisor, he said, do not normalize terrorism.
Yes.
It's a very, very significant point that he made, because we know that from the first day of this interim regime, they have been releasing all these terrorists and Islamic radicals and
Yes.
fundamentalists who had been jailed after due trial by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. And even the head of the Ansar al-Bangla team, and sometimes,
Yes.
sometimes jails were just surrounded and they were forced to release all the Islamic radicals that were there in them. So, clearly this regime has been trying to normalize terrorism in every which way.
Yes.
Secondly, the revival of the relationship with Pakistan. The fact that cargo ships are coming, some have been caught with very dangerous explosives. And despite customs officer pointing it out, these explosives were let into the country. And, all these indications, the ISI generals are there. They've gone to the border with India. They are saying that we're going to be positioned with various divisions for training purposes. All this is an indication of their wanting to go back to their terrorist ways that I was very familiar with when I was there at that time, and they were helping every Northeast insurgent group
Yes.
possible. Whereas under Sheikh Hasina for 15 years, she recognized India's security red lines, and
Right.
she stopped all assistance to these Northeast groups. And these groups were absolutely disbanded. Anup Ketia was handed back to India. Paresh Barua ran off to China. And, the Northeast had 15 years peace and progress and development. Now the situation may be a little different with the Manipur issue having come up in this way. But the way that this interim regime is normalizing terrorism is a matter of great concern to India, and we cannot have normal relations if they go on taking these kind of actions. And I think our External Affairs Minister has flagged it very well
Yes.
in his discussion with us.
So where are we on a scale of 1 to 10, Ambassador Sikri? If we were 1 in August, where are we today in February?
Well, I think we are sliding down the scale very rapidly.
Yes.
But I would say that the government of India has shown enormous patience, because they realize the importance of having a good relation with Bangladesh. But we are seeing with concern, I mean, even, China, you mentioned China. China is very busy cultivating everybody in Bangladesh,
Yes.
The Jamaat-e-Islami had a visit there with a big delegation. The BNP has had 2 visits, 2 delegations have visited China. And obviously, they are trying to make sure that they keep their relationship with Bangladesh intact. But whether it's going to be possible or what's going to happen, I can say that we are showing an enormous amount of patience. We are watching the situation very, very carefully indeed.
We're watching the situation very carefully indeed, Ambassador Sikri, and with a great deal of concern as well. But Raja Mujib, given the kind of situation in Bangladesh right now, where India isn't happy, the army chief isn't happy, of course there are a whole lot of political parties who are unhappy as well. How long before the people of Bangladesh start longing for the peace and tranquility and economic stability of Bangladesh under Sheikh Hasina? 15 years of progress, peace and economic development.
See, if you look at Bangladesh and if you look at Pakistan, both have a very similar political history, right? And when it comes to the patience of people, we have seen the patience of people of Pakistan also. They become used to the kind of rules they have. Bangladesh had a very prosperous time during Sheikh Hasina's time, but look where it led them to today. They have ousted the same prime minister, which brought them a relatively very good economy. But it is not the economy. Their politics is not about economy. The radicalization in Bangladesh, politics is all about, religion. So you can't, the economics is not even a factor there. The people who would be, asking for it are the people who are, the businessmen are going to have, will make amends with each and every government which will be coming, because we know that corruption is a norm in Bangladesh, and most of the business houses, they work, under corrupt models to get what they want for their own businesses. So I think nothing major is going to change. And as far as common people are concerned, I don't have much hope from common people rising up against something like this for restoration of democracy. I think democracy has always been very subjective in Bangladesh, and Bangladeshis are very used to that kind of, I would call it a pseudo-democratic process, which they have been seeing since 1971.
Right. Very interesting points there, Raja Mujib. The fact that, politics is not about the economy in Bangladesh. It is actually other issues that you mentioned, religion. And of course, that democracy in Bangladesh has always been subjective. But, General Shankar, in conclusion, where does this leave us really? The fact that, these points that he outlined, that Raja Mujib is talking about, the fact is how it's very different. It's a different country from ours. And therefore, all the factors that you've just outlined don't seem to matter as much in Bangladesh as they do in India, for instance.
Yeah. From an Indian perspective, we should be prepared for the fact that the things are going to go even worse
Right.
before they have a hope of getting better. And
Yes.
let's prepare for it. So what does this preparation involve? I think first and foremost, our border control has to be pretty strict.
Right.
And I think certain action has been taken on that score already, right? And then, like what the ambassador spoke of, our internal security system and intelligence has to be beefed up.
Right.
There's no choice, especially with Manipur. Manipur is a sore, on the eastern edge,
Yes.
sandwiched between an unstable Bangladesh and an equally unstable Myanmar with Chinese presence all over. All right. And then I think we need to start talking army to army.
Yes.
We've done the diplomatic route. I think there is a scope for speaking from army to army. I'm sure there are people in the Indian Army or the Indian Armed Forces who have a connect with General Wakar.
Yes.
We probably could start talking that and open a different route of dialogue, because the current route of dialogue doesn't work. You see what Ambassador Sikri said.
Yes.
Our external affairs minister and their advisor spoke in Muscat. And, our external affairs minister spoke very nicely and put the whole thing out in correct perspective. But this man goes back, and if you see his statements in Bangladesh media,
Yes.
they're exactly the opposite. He says India need not bother what we do over to our citizens and things like
Right.
that. They're
Right.
pretty, right? So I think we need to be looking at all this very realistically. And we need to also send a strong message to Pakistan. How strong this message is to be seen. Should we start giving moral support to the Baluchis just the way Pervez Musharraf gave moral support for 20 to 30 years to Kashmiris?
Yes.
These are questions which we have to start now really thinking of. And how do we get this message across to Pakistan through track 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever is important? Because the Pakistani factor, which Madam had highlighted, is pretty important.
Yes.
And they would be fueling a lot of things there. And we
Right.
must also remember that Pakistan will be the conduit for China to enter Bangladesh.
Absolutely. It's already happening. But, Ambassador Sikri, closing comments, do you think it's time for the Indian military to dial the Bangladesh military, as General Shankar mentioned?
Well, I must say that army-to-army contacts had improved considerably under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and we had good relationships always. Now, we must remember that General Bakar Zaman was appointed very recently. I mean,
Yes.
he was appointed only actually a few weeks before this so-called, I don't even call it a revolution, I don't even call it a students' uprising. It was a planned regime change operation. Very well planned, and that's what happened. And Bakar Zaman was new at that time, and of course he was not in a position to stop it in any way. But I think at all times that Bakar Zaman has never said a word against India, and I'm sure that there are contacts. I'm sure there are, army to army. I'm not
Yes.
very aware of this. I'm quite sure, because this is a normal progression of things. There's so many people from Bangladesh, they are officers of the Bangladesh Army. Just the other day I was at Defence Services Staff College in Wellington, and there are Bangladesh Army officers there doing their courses.
Yes.
It's not that the relationship has changed. But I want to say one point about, and certainly I'm all in favor of army-to-army contacts. I'm in favor of contacts at all levels in Bangladesh. It should not be just
Yes.
government or official. But I want to say one thing about democracy. I want to say that although the democracy in Bangladesh seems very confused to us, very confusing, and we wonder if there's democracy at all.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that all that is happening is all happening in the name of democracy.
Right.
And the whole thing, the whipping up of the anti-Sheikh Hasina feeling was also in the name of democracy. That she's not allowing free and fair elections, that we are not, we didn't vote and our names are not there. And this was the kind of feeling that was whipped up
Right.
against her to show that she's actually not being democratic at all.
Right.
But the fact that now, under the last 6 to 7 months, the situation has deteriorated far beyond what it was at any time under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. People are actually saying that it was better earlier.
Yes.
They're saying that Aage Bharo. So they're actually saying that. And I think that they have realized that this present regime, whoever that may be in it, they're more interested in stamping in Islamist power.
Yes.
More interested in bringing, radical Islam into the mainstream of Bangladesh politics, where it never was. It never.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that the forces were not there, but they were always being kept at bay,
Yes.
And now they're being brought to the forefront.
And the
So
genie
this
is out of the bottle, Ambassador Sikri. But I'm afraid we're completely out of time there. Thank you very much, for joining us. Data was called the new oil of the information age. But of late, countries who have both data and oil have begun racing for yet a new material. And the new oil of this age are minerals: cobalt, lithium, graphite, rare earths, and nickel. President Trump has arm-twisted Ukraine for a mineral deal. He covets Greenland for the same reason. Russia is believed to have offered its own minerals to the United States. And China, watching silently from far, accounts for over 80% of the world's rare earths like gallium, germanium, and antimony. China has said it won't issue licenses to the United States for these rare earths. Now, all of these rare earths are critical for the manufacture of microchips, satellites, and smartphones, the gadgets that make the information revolution of our times. And here's the other fact: China controls about 70% of the production of rare earths and 90% of all its processing, according to the estimates by the US Geological Survey. Joining me to make sense of this ongoing mineral race in the world right now are Dheeraj Nayyar and Srinath Sridharan. Gentlemen, welcome to the News 9 Plus show. Dheeraj, make sense of this for us, the developments over the last couple of days and hours. Minerals are the new oil. What are India's options really?
Yeah. So at the moment, we are not, big producers of minerals other than, coal and iron ore. And, the critical minerals of the future are really the ones you mentioned at the start, plus, copper, zinc, aluminium.
Yes.
The things which are used in, electric vehicles or renewable energy infrastructure or high-tech chips or even weapons, satellites, all of the things you mentioned. So I think going forward, once you start manufacturing these things, you need a lot of these raw materials. The thing right now is that India, apart from not being, big producer of any of these, is not also a big manufacturer of any of these things at this
Right.
point. But that is likely to change. Right now, even our EVs, which are made in India, the batteries are imported from outside. But
Yes.
that ecosystem is building up, and that will change. And once that changes, we'll again find slowly that we are moving into the kind of situation that we faced with oil all these decades.
Right.
Because we don't produce enough, we are dependent on imports, and therefore dependent on, vulnerable to price fluctuations, to supply disruptions. So we don't want to go into that, path with regard to critical minerals. And therefore, I think the challenge for India, of course, the one thing that is being done is to look outside and tie up with friendly countries, supply
Yes.
chains with, say, Chile or Argentina or Australia. But I think beyond that, one shouldn't be 100% vulnerable to imports, even from
Right.
friendly countries, because you don't know how these things will, evolve in the future. So we must explore much more in India, and we must produce at least a certain amount, if not 100% in India.
Srinath, what must India really do to, a country that's soon to be the world's third largest economy? We have very few friendly countries that we can source all of these rare earths from. As Dheeraj mentioned, it's time for us to start diversifying, start exploring. Do you think enough of exploration has been done in India? What can we do? For instance, could we start looking at the seabed? That's been seen as another source of these rare earths and minerals that Dheeraj mentioned.
Yeah, thanks, Sandeep. To start off, first I must congratulate Dheeraj on a wonderful, thought-provoking op-ed that he had written on this topic. Just to
Yes.
build on what he had mentioned, I think very importantly, we already have examples. ONGC Videsh, You can mine in India as well as explore collaboratively with other friendly nations. But Sandeep, the challenge is the tag friendly seems to be changing very quickly nowadays.
Yes.
Are these long-term friends or are they, fair weather friends? I mean, that's a bigger challenge of it. So I think we must explore everything because there is no one single answer. The larger tough conversation for us is the consumption economy that we are building or a narrative around India would
Yes.
mean that everything around emerging technologies, data, devices, and consumer electronics is going to put more pressure to procure. And while India wants to say make in India or the manufacturing PLI, the challenge is if you're going to be dependent on other nations,
Right.
we will end up being an assembler for very, very long time to come. That's the largest challenge that we have economically.
Right, absolutely. A larger challenge economically, that India might be just an assembler, and of course we are a consumer as well. That's going to fuel a lot of the demand that we have, as you mentioned, Srinath. And of course, Dheeraj, this is the argument of your piece as well. But, is there a need? You're a policy guy. Give us an idea of where the Indian government's mineral earths policy should be, the rare earths policy, these metal policies. How much of this will be actually driven by the government of India?
Quite a lot, actually, because in the US, everything that is below the surface belongs to whoever owns that part of the surface. So if it's
Yes.
under your house, it belongs to you. But in India, all resources belong to the state.
Yes.
Right? All the people, and the state is the custodian of those resources. So policy matters. And I think, where we are missing a trick in India is that, as I said in my first statement, that we are very good with, surface minerals like iron
Yes.
ore or coal, which are relatively close to the surface, but a lot of minerals actually occur deeper down, a kilometer down, 2 kilometers down under the surface, and that requires technology and that requires massive investment. We have the geology.
Yes.
Our geology is not dissimilar to Australia, South Africa, Canada, which are all mineral-rich countries. And actually going below the surface is in many ways much easier because you do much less displacement above the surface, because you can go straight underground and then mine there or explore there. But I think what we don't have in India right now is the exploration. So exploration currently is done really by two PSUs, which is the Geological Survey and the Mineral Exploration Corporation. They don't have the funds, they don't have the technology. What you need is, exploration happening, and exploration is a risky business, as you know, Sandeep. You may
Yes.
do 100 explorations and find one.
Yes.
But that one that you find is the one that you monetize. So in India right now, the laws are such that if you find something, you must give the data to the government and the government will auction it. That gives very little incentive for the explorer
Yes.
to do exploration. So I think the global practice is that, where there is no discovered mineral. So, I mean, how
Yes.
do you auction? We have an auction system, but how do you auction something which you don't know whether it exists or not?
Right.
So for existing minerals or those which are discovered, auctions are great. But for those which are not, and where, deep exploration is needed, you have to allow, explorers to come in and monetize any find they have. Of course, the government will have a revenue share which they can fix, royalties which they can fix. So it's not that the government will be deprived of revenue in any way, but I think we need this paradigm shift where we need to encourage exploration, risk-taking in exploration beyond just the public sector companies.
Absolutely. Well put, Dheeraj. The fact that we actually need to incentivize exploration. And Srinath, I'm going to ask you that in conclusion. What is the government's drill, baby, drill policy? If I can quote President Trump, what should it look like? Dheeraj has put together a lot of those elements to that. Do you want to add something to what the government needs to do to incentivize exploration? Of course, and you mentioned those two departments of the government, completely underfunded. One doesn't even know where their offices are, and they are going to be literally very critical if we are to be, self-sufficient in exploration of these minerals.
I think two words of caution, Sandeep. One is, as we explore newer technologies, we don't have the capability technologically. When I say we as a country, I'm not bucketing only the public sector or the private sector.
Yes.
So it is expensive. That's a reality. But if we have to ensure 1/6 of humanity has access to what we go ahead, we will have to start spending money. That's one. Two is, I think, in the last 20 years of Indian growth, economic growth, and aspirational urbanization that we have had. I mean, why am I quoting urbanization? Because the power consumption and the consumption of various data and emerging technologies is only increasing. For example, 25 years ago, the number of switch points in every single average household in India was 4. You had a tube light, you had a fan, and you had 2 plug points. Today, if you look at your home, the average number of plug points or the sockets in an average room is probably about 11 to 12.
Right.
And same thing with commercial establishments, hotels, and so forth. So what does it mean? It means that in a frenzy to kind of mine, explore and mine, where do we draw the line with consciousness towards environment and social awareness? And I think the challenge in the last 20 years, lots of groups have had these challenges and pushbacks in states. I mean, Goa, we have had to have a Supreme Court intervention for a couple of these. And I think that's something that we'll have to be very cautious when we bring into a, let's say, the new mineral policy of sorts, whether it is
Right.
or anywhere. And that's where I'm a little challenged, saying that, or where do we draw the line? I mean, one, we will say that we need this to be self-sufficient. The other is we'll have to say that the Mother Earth or the Dharti Earth, once you kind of destroy it, you can't get the balance back. So this is a challenge that I find that the mining sector has to be far more self-regulated.
Right.
I mean, that sounds like an irony by itself, but that's the reality.
Right, absolutely irony, but that's the reality, and India has no option, as you said, gentlemen, the fact that we have to explore ways of becoming self-sufficient in all of these materials, minerals, that if we are to stay ahead and indeed become the third largest economy by the end of this decade. Thank you very much for joining us, Dheeraj Nayat, Srinath Sridharan. Mumbai is India's economic capital and its entertainment capital as well. But geopolitics, it seems, is New Delhi's preserve. Now, we have a unique literature festival in Mumbai that aims to change things in Maximum City. The Max City Valley of Words Litfest in Mumbai on the 1st and 2nd of March. Now joined by the co-founders of this event, both military veterans, Commodore Shrikant Kesnur and Prabal Dasgupta. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. Prabal, I'm going to start with you. You're an author yourself. You juggle your writing responsibilities with corporate life. Why a Litfest on geopolitics in Mumbai?
Thank you, Sandeep, for having me over for this talk. So the reason why we're having it here, and that's a key question here, is that we've had several literature festivals. We do have several literature festivals across India on different subjects which focus on fiction, non-fiction, etc. We wanted to repurpose the aim of a literature festival towards a set of areas which are all connected to India in terms of its connectedness to the world, in terms of its interests to the nation. And these include geopolitics, business, history, maritime affairs, and also the soft power issues of food and films, etc. So the idea was to explore India's connectedness with the world. And we, in the process of doing that, we chose Mumbai because, like you said, Mumbai is the gateway to the world through the waters of the Indian Ocean. And we also believe that as the world gets into a Trump era and it's connected from Greenland to Gaza to tariffs to everything, you can't put a world in different silos. You have to have a connectedness. And India plays a very important role, given its position in the world. We thought that it's important to, therefore, articulate this and connect it through the world of books, conversations, and stories and works of authors, both eminent and new voices.
Right, absolutely. The kind of sessions that we're going to be seeing at the Litfest, geopolitics is one. What are the others?
So we have geopolitics, we have history, we have trade, business. We're looking at the volatility of markets. So there's a session on markets and money markets mayhem. And how does it impact India? So if you look at the sessions, they're all connected to India in some way or the other.
Right.
They explore the past in terms of history. They explore how wars and conflicts really pave the way for the creation of history. Right. There is also a slew of wonderful sessions, maritime sessions, talking about the talking about the country and the oceans. And the mighty Marathas. There's another session which talks about the history of the Maratha Empire and its connectedness with the Navy and the ancient navies, etc. So we are also going back in history to look at how the nation has been connected to some of those very important key areas. And then looking at the current areas where we are looking at geopolitics, we're looking at trade, business, impact on markets. And then we are also looking at technology, we're looking at artificial intelligence, etc. And if you look at
Right.
it, it's underpinned by the nation's interest in all of these areas. We also have a very interesting session on history versus mythology.
Right.
And there we bring in, different people with works, and including Amish Tripathi, who's very well known.
Yes.
We also have Amitabh Kant speaking on the current areas of India's interest, as far as he's written a book on G20 and how India
Absolutely.
scaled the G20
So
summit.
I'm going
We
to
also
go
have
over
Sanjay
to
Sanya.
your co-founder, Prabal, Comrade Srikanth Kesnur. Srikanth, the only time Mumbai talks geopolitics is when there's a movie or an OTT series being made on these topics. There's very little discourse outside of, entertainment. How does this LitFest, this very ambitious project that you've put together with a very big galaxy of names, how does this LitFest aim to change the discourse in Mumbai?
Yes, I think you hit it right when you brought out that geopolitics in Mumbai is limited when Bollywood happens. So the basic idea is that a financial capital of the country, that a municipal corporation with the largest budget should also have a strategic culture and should be asking these sort of questions. I mean, why should you people in Delhi alone decide on strategy and policy? I think Mumbai needs to do that too.
Mumbai needs to do that. I'm afraid we're completely out of time, Comrade Kesnur. You can catch these gentlemen, Prabal Dasgupta, Comrade Srikanth Kesnur, and a galaxy of very distinguished speakers at the Max City Wow LitFest on at the National Gallery of Modern Art in Fort, South Mumbai this weekend. Don't forget to register. And thank you for watching the News9 Plus show.